Hi, I'm Quincy Larson. I am the teacher who founded freeCodeCamp.org, which is a community where anyone can learn programming for free. And we cover math, programming, and computer science concepts in a linear curriculum where you can start at the top and you can just keep working your way through all these different skills. So we have a big community of millions of people around the world who are learning programming together. And we're a charity based here in the US. So essentially, we don't charge anybody money. We just have a lot of people that donate to freeCodeCamp, and that pays for the servers and that pays for all the teachers that work at freeCodeCamp and the software engineers. So I started out as a teacher myself. I was teaching English in both China and in the United States in California. And I just wanted to make my school more efficient. I didn't know a lot about technology. When I moved to a new city, usually my wife would help me configure the Wi-Fi router because I couldn't necessarily figure it out myself. That's how limited my technology abilities were. I just didn't have the patience for it. I was 30 years old. I was a school director running schools, and I had about 25 people who worked for me. I had a bunch of administrators and I had a bunch of teachers, and then we had a bunch of students that we were trying to help. The way you help students is not by spending all day on a computer entering paperwork and dealing with immigration documents and dealing with grade reports and things like that. The way you help students is by spending a lot of time with students, teaching them English. So my goal as the school director was to try to figure out how we could make it more fun for the students and help the teachers spend more time with the students. So what I did was I figured out ways to automate some of the school things. Now, I didn't know about programming or computers. I just started Googling things and I started finding some tools that I could use. I just kept going deeper and deeper until eventually I had figured out some ways to automate things, and the school improved a whole lot. The teachers were able to spend more time with students. Everybody was a lot happier. The students were telling their friends, hey, you should come to this school because this school is really great. The teachers are really nice. And we won some awards, and we became like one of the most popular schools in the entire school system. And a lot of that was thanks to just spending a little time trying to learn some programming so I could automate parts of the school. And what that got me thinking is, oh, if I could do that much with just a little bit of programming skills, I should learn more programming. So I started learning to code seriously, and I went to a lot of hackathons and competed with other developers, and sometimes I won those hackathons. And eventually, after about 9 months of doing this, I was able to get a job as a software engineer at a tech startup in California. And eventually, after I worked there for about a year, I started thinking it'd be cool to teach other people how to become developers too, because this is a really nice job. I get to sit in an air-conditioned office at a computer, and I get to work with really interesting, thoughtful people, and I get to solve problems all day using technology. So I thought, oh, I'm going to try to create some projects and see if I can help people learn programming. Well, I tried several different projects that didn't work, and then eventually I tried freeCodeCamp. freeCodeCamp has become this giant tool that more than 1 million people use every day to learn math, programming, and computer science. So that's kind of how I went along the process, discovering programming and ultimately teaching programming. When I learned to program, I had to use lots of library books. I would go and do courses from different universities online that were free, and that was very helpful. But I kept changing topic. I didn't know what to learn. And I spent a whole lot of time learning Java and C++ and other tools that I never use. Because if you're a modern programmer working with modern tools, you're probably going to be spending a lot more time using JavaScript and Python. So I recommend just learning these tools that haven't really changed in 20 years since they were created. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Git, Linux, Python, SQL. If you learn these 7 tools, you're going to be able to do basically 80% of the jobs that are listed when you go look at job listings. Yes, some of them might require, oh, you need to know some Swift for mobile app development, or you need to know this particular database like Cassandra or MongoDB or something, right? But in general, if you understand those basic tools, you'll be able to quickly learn other tools. So that is how I'd recommend you get started. But the main thing is just practice coding as much as possible. FreeCodeCamp, everything's a project you're going through, you're building little projects, is fun. And a lot of it is just have fun. The more you practice programming, the better you'll get at programming. The better you get at programming, the more fun it is to program. It's not very fun at the beginning because it can be frustrating, but as you get better and better, you're going to feel more confident and it's going to become more fun. In 2023, JavaScript is still the most widely used programming language. You can use it for pretty much everything. It's not the best for doing any given one task. For example, if you're doing some machine learning, you're probably going to want to use Python. Python has a lot more machine learning libraries than JavaScript does. Now, JavaScript, you can do machine learning in JavaScript, but if you learn JavaScript really well, then you'll be able to pretty easily learn Python really well, and then you can use those Python libraries. But there are lots of things that JavaScript can do that Python can't do very well. And there are lots of things that JavaScript can do that Java can't do very well, right? So JavaScript is not the best at any one thing, but it's still a very good general tool for programming. I encourage you to learn JavaScript first and then learn Python, and then you can learn any other programming languages you need for your job. Learning the first one will make it much easier to learn subsequent programming languages. They all use similar concepts, similar data structures, similar syntax. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of just learning a little bit of JavaScript. So I strongly recommend to get a career as a developer. First of all, I wrote a book on this that I published a few months ago. It's called How to Learn to Code and Get a Developer Job. Just Google Learn to Code book, and you should find my book. It's free. You don't have to pay any money. It's right there in the browser. It's like a full-length book that you can scroll through and you can jump to the different chapters. So I recommend reading that, really. But what areas should you study? It's not necessarily about what you should study. I mean, yes, you should learn some computer science. You should learn some programming. You should ideally learn some math, but you could argue that you don't really need math skills for a lot of programming. It's just certain types of things like dealing with machine learning and data science that you need a lot of statistics, things like that. But I think more than what you should study, you should do three things. You should build your skills by programming a lot. You should build your network by meeting a lot of other people who are developers or who are in tech that might be able to help you get a job. And you should build your reputation as a developer. You should build lots of projects. You should have a portfolio. You should contribute to open source. These are ways that you can prove that you're a developer and that your work is worth incorporating into code bases. So by contributing to open source, if an open source project like freeCodeCamp, for example, the entire platform is open source on GitHub. If you make a contribution to freeCodeCamp, then when an employer looks at your GitHub profile, they're gonna be like, oh, wow, this person contributed to freeCodeCamp, or this person contributed to Firefox or some other big open source project. And that the fact that we accepted your code is an endorsement of you and your ability as a developer. Building your reputation is just doing that. And then building your network, just going to tech events, going to conferences, hanging out with as many developers and people in tech as you can. You never know who's going to help you get a job. A lot of times it's not a hiring manager, it's one of your peers that you coded along with at a hackathon. They'll get a job and their employer will be like, oh, you're such a good developer. Do you know any other developers that can come work for us? And they'll be like, oh yeah, my friend. And then they can pull you in and get you an interview. So you never know who is going to help you in your journey of becoming a professional developer. So about 60% of developer jobs in the United States are just full stack web development jobs. Now that could be like front end developer or user experience designer, or something like that. But essentially That's web development, right? Or back-end development, or DevOps, which is like working with servers, right? Site reliability engineer. They have lots of different titles, but at the end of the day, most developer jobs involve working with the internet and working with, web servers and HTTP requests and things like that. So what I would recommend you do if you want to get a job as a developer is just focus on that area, become a full stack developer, and then you can specialize from there. Fastest way is to learn full stack web development. I think ChatGPT is awesome. I use it pretty much every day. I'll write SQL queries with it. I will write regular expressions. I will create Google Sheet like formulas. If it's something that's really simple that I can easily describe and explaining it to the computer, it can usually create like a decent script. And then I go through and I make sure the script works, make sure the code works, and then I can just use it. And it's a great time-saving device. Now, what percentage of my day am I using ChatGPT to get things done? How much time is it actually saving me? Maybe like an hour a day. It's not bad. But if you think about it, like as a developer, you're working 8 hours a day. Ideally, hopefully your employer doesn't make you work a lot more than that, but realistically, you're probably working more than that. But imagine having your own intern that can basically do simple things for you. If you describe the task well, it can go and try to do that, right? It's kind of like what having large language models like GPT-4, that's what having those at your disposal does. And so it's been a great windfall for developers because we can be more productive. And it's probably been a lot of help to other people too, but I think developers are the people that benefit the most from GPT and other large language model tools. I would say that could it potentially put developers out of work? Not in its current state. It's not that powerful. I think that over time, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, it could be way more powerful, but there's going to be a lot more work to be done. So I'm not worried about it. What I am more worried about is people thinking, oh, I don't need to learn to code anymore because ChatGPT, there aren't going to be any jobs. There will be jobs. I assure you, like I just was in San Francisco like all month, basically, and there are tons of tech companies that are hiring. And they're not looking for people who are really good at ChatGPT. They're looking for people who understand computer science and programming and mathematics, right? So I would say that learn how to use ChatGPT, learn how to use these powerful new tools, and they will make you more productive. But don't let yourself get discouraged and think like, oh, this thing's so much smarter. No, you can absolutely do what these tools are doing. It's just, it saves you time. If you already know how to do something, then you can do a good job of delegating it to ChatGPT, and then you can validate that its output is good and that it's usable. But same thing for writing. Like I write a lot. I just told you I wrote an entire book. I can write a lot better than ChatGPT. I think my style's much more easy to read. It's much more human sounding, obviously, because I'm a human. But I would be willing to bet that if like I had a writing assignment and then GPT wrote an assignment with my 10,000 plus hours of writing experience, maybe 20,000 hours of writing experience, I could probably write something that would be substantially better than what GPT generates. Now, if GPT continues to progress, who knows? But we don't know that GPT is going to continue to progress at the rate it has. There could be some fundamental limits. So again, I'm not worried about this personally, and I don't think you should be worried about it. What I think you should be doing is learning how to use these tools and not being afraid of them. Before the pandemic, we had a lot of people that would get together in cafes. They get together at offices after hours, after the work was done. They'd come together and they'd program together, and they'd have programming study groups. And now that the pandemic is over, at least here in the US, people are starting to come together again to do that. And in Korea, we had several study groups. We had one in Seoul, we had one in Busan, and people would get together and they would code together and they'd learn together, and it was fun, relaxing time. And I think that it's a great way to meet people and to get positive peer pressure from other people who are working very hard to learn programming. So if you're able to, I would encourage you to meet with those people, to look and see if your university, if your company, if your local city has any sort of programming related events, and see if you can attend those, even if it's just like a tech talk where somebody's talking about giving a conference talk. That's a really great way to learn and to get things from other people who are learning the code. So I encourage you to look for those. First of all, I would say that it is hard. Anybody who tells you it's easy, they're probably trying to sell you something because learning the code is not easy. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of time. I was able to learn to code well enough to get a developer job in about 9 months, but I already have, I already had a graduate degree, and I'd spent a lot of time working as a professional in, education, teaching and administering schools. So you also probably have some relevant experience that you're bringing, even if you're changing into software development as a career. So don't think, oh, I'm starting from zero. You probably are starting from halfway there. You just need to learn how to use a few new tools and you can work as a developer. What I would encourage you to do is to just spend as much time immersing yourself in technology as you can. Listen to programming related podcasts when you're walking around the neighborhood, when you're driving to work or riding the bus, when you're just doing chores around the house, when you're exercising. That's a great way to just get exposed to a lot of programming concepts, a lot of tech concepts, security related concepts. So podcasts have been a huge part of my learning, and I encourage you to check those out. I host the freeCodeCamp podcast. If you want to hear me talk to software developers, these are long English conversations that you can listen to, and you can practice your English listening, and you can also learn about programming and technology. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to watch YouTube. There's some really fun, interesting videos where people build projects and share them, but watching people program will be helpful. And then, of course, the most important thing is to spend as much time as you can programming and building projects. Practice, practice, practice. It's all about practice. So if you can figure out, you might be really tired at the end of the day. You're like, oh, I just finished school, or I just finished work. I just need to go to bed. That's fine. And if you even learn like 20 or 30 minutes a day over a long enough time, over like 18 months, that you can learn a tremendous amount if you just spend like 20 or 30 minutes a day programming or learning about programming. So I hope that's helpful. Just know that there are literally millions of people around the world who are trying to learn programming right now. So you're not alone. There's a huge community out there to support you. And freeCodeCamp, of course, we've got you covered. If you just need learning resources, if you need a community place to ask questions, we have a forum where you can ask questions. Last question. Communication. Programming is all about you communicating to the computer what you want the computer to do. Computers just want to help. That's what they are designed for. That's their purpose, is to just do what you tell them. But if you're not good at communicating with the computer won't do a good job. It's not going to be able to figure out what you need it to do. So what I would encourage you to do is just practice programming and think about it as the computer's your friend. It wants you to help you. It wants to help you. Don't get frustrated. Don't start blaming the computer or slapping the computer. The computer is just doing what you tell it to do, but you have to have the clarity of thought and the clarity of communication ability to be able to get ideas out of your head and into the computer so it can execute those ideas and so it can get things done for you. So I hope this has been helpful. I really enjoyed talking with you all. With that, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and happy coding.